Number 10, Pasiphae and the Bull. The gods, man, they love to throw some bestiality as punishment at their will and pleasure. Equus probably would have been their favorite Broadway show. Everyone knows the story of the Minotaur, but do you know how it all got started? Well, let me enlighten you. King Minos begged the god Poseidon to send him a glorious white bull that he could sacrifice. The god obliged. He sent him the most beautiful, stunning creature from out of the sea, because apparently bulls come out of the sea. Anyways, but when King Minos went to sacrifice the creature, he found he could not bring himself to kill such a noble beast, so he just killed another bull instead. Outraged by his disobedience, Poseidon punished him by making his wife Pasiphae fall into uncontrollable lust with the bull. She convinced an Athenian inventor to create a hollow wooden bull for her to hide in, kind of like a Trojan horse, that could facilitate a union. Yeah. Like a union. You get what I mean by that, yeah. She then later gave birth to the one, the only, the Minotaur, which would later plague King Minos and all that fun stuff. You know, like the whole labyrinth thing. Yeah. That story. Weird. Don't understand it. But here it is. Number 9, Arachne. You'd think if someone was really good at something, they should be rewarded. But no, oh no, that's not how the ancient gods worked. Their egos were very fragile. Sorry, okay, chill out. Anyways, Arachne was a girl who was an incredibly talented seamstress, which made her a little bit cocky. One day she was so proud of her work that she proclaimed that she was a better weaver than Athena. Athena was the goddess of wisdom and war, so not a good person to mess with. Athena warned her not to make such claims, but she ignored her, so the two faced off. The two had a weaving contest in which Arachne ended up winning in front of all of the onlookers, but Athena didn't accept defeat gracefully and, instead of rewarding her, punished Arachne to feel immense overwhelming guilt, causing her to take her own life. But that wasn't enough for Athena. The goddess brought her back as a giant spider who would forever weave her designs in the forms of webs. Not very nice. Not very nice indeed. Number 8, Erysichthon. Are rich people rich because they're greedy, or greedy because they're rich? Either way, Erysichthon was, bottom line, a very greedy man with wealth that spilled over. Kinda like the Sun King, really. Planning to build another feast hall for himself because he needed another one, he demanded that a massive grove of trees be cut down to make room. This grove, however, was sacred to Demeter, the goddess of earth, but the men did as he asked, save for one tree. One tree was left standing, covered in beautiful wreaths, symbolizing every prayer she'd ever granted. When the men wouldn't do it, Erysichthon tried to do it himself. While doing so, he killed the dryad who lived in the tree, which really didn't bode well with the goddess. To suit his greed, she set down Limos, the divine representation of starvation. Overwhelmed by a formidable hunger, the more he ate, the more he desired. He sold off his entire fortune, including his own daughter, to buy more and more food, but nothing would slake his hunger. Finally, he began eating himself, bit by bit, until he finally perished in his own greed, destitute and alone. So, moral of the story is don't cut down trees. Or don't be greedy and don't cut down trees. Number 7, Leda and the Swan. Like, Zeus, head of the gods, the one we all should be looking up to, was like questionably immoral, but like, I mean, when you're a god you can kind of do what you want. This story hurts my head because I just, like, how does A get to B? Anyways, Leda was the daughter of the king of Pleuron in Aetolia and wife to Dionysus. One day she wandered by the river Eurotas and Zeus fell hard for this bathing beauty, but he just couldn't show up in his true form because 1, Hera, his wife and sister, was watching, and 2, she probably would explode if she saw his true form. So he went to Aphrodite to ask what to do, and she transformed him into an immaculate swan. By either seduction or nefarious action, there's two sides to the story. Some say her, and others say that she was into it, I don't know. Leda became pregnant either way and gave birth to 2 eggs. Eggs! Inside the eggs were 2 sets of twins. One, the infamous Helen of Troy and Polydeuces, and the other 2 were born from Leda's husband, Clytemnestra and Castor. One pair was immortal and the other mortal, which is also still confusing because, like, didn't Helen of Troy die? I don't know. There was also another version which is pretty much the same tale, except it was the goddess Nemesis, not Leda, and Zeus turned into a beaver, and it was just really weird. So again, confusing. No idea what's going on. Number 6, Kronos. I like how the Greek gods are as like chaotic to how the world is in Greek mythology. It kind of makes a weird sort of sense, you know? This weird godly family was messed up from the very beginning, and if you don't know the original story of Kronos, then, well, here you go. Before the gods of Olympus, before Zeus and Hera, there were the elder gods Gaia and Uranus, and then their son Kronos, who married Rhea. Kronos overthrew his father, and when he heard that one of his children was going to do the same thing, he decided to eat them. All of them. Just gobbled them down like an aspirin. Rhea wasn't a huge fan of the whole thing, and eventually enough was enough. So when Kronos went to swallow Zeus, Rhea tricked him and gave him a rock instead. She stole Zeus and hid him away until the day he would be strong enough to return and overtake his father. Disguised as a cupbearer, he gave his father a purgative which made him puke up all of his siblings. Together they stormed against their father and overthrew him after 10 years in battle. Whew, that's a rough start to family life. And then Zeus married his sister, and there was a whole bunch of incest, and it's just, you know what I mean. You've heard that. Number 5, the story of Mira. What is she pointing at? Ever been so sad and disheartened that you just wish you could turn into a tree? Yeah, me too. Then people could just leave me alone. However, the only person to ever successfully transform into a tree was Mira, who turned into the Mer tree. But the story behind it is kind of messed up. Mira loved her father. A little too much. Like way too much. She was in love with her father and desperately wanted to be with him. She knew it was wrong and tried everything to resist the gnawing desire inside of her, even trying to take her own life. Her nurse found her and, fearing ever parting with her, decided to work up a scheme to hitch the two together. On the celebration of Bacchus, the queen hitched town, so the bed was empty. You see where this is going. Disguised as a maid, the nurse brought Mira to his bedchamber for 12 straight nights. On the final night, the king, overwhelmed with curiosity, removed the mask she was wearing. When he discovered that his lover had been his daughter, he reached for his sword and tried to kill her. Makes sense. Mira fled her father and ran across the desert for 9 months, and surprise, she was pregnant. When she couldn't run anymore, she begged the gods to hide her from the world. They took pity on her and turned her into the Mer tree, which one day would be hit by a running boar, revealing the child Adonis tucked into the bark. Adonis was also supposed to be super hot and awesome, which totally doesn't play by the rules of like incest. Like usually something goes wrong there. Remember Joffrey? Like that didn't go well. Number 4, Ixion. This one is confusing because it prompts a question I've never wanted to ask. How do you even make love to a cloud? When Ixion, the king of Lapiths and the son of Ares, married Dia, the daughter of Dionysus, he promised him a gift. However, when Ixion reneged on the promise, Dionysus stole some of his horses. Enraged, Ixion invited him to dinner to make amends, but instead pushed him into a fiery pit of coals. I mean, he is the son of Ares, like what you expect. He was banished for such a crime because it was completely uncool, but after a few years, wandering sad and alone, Zeus took pity on him and invited him up to Olympus. That's a good idea, where Ixion got the hots for Hera. Zeus decided to see if he would actually even try it, like would he even try it? And so he sent him a cloud shaped like Hera. Ixion did try it, and he made love with the cloud, and even stranger, it got pregnant. Their union gave birth to the first centaurs, who were literally and figuratively horny little half-horse, half-human people that roamed the world. As further punishment, Ixion was thrown from Olympus, struck by Zeus's lightning bolt, and bound by Hermes to a fiery spinning wheel. Some people just really don't deserve your pity, man. They just don't. Number 3, Alcyone and Ceyx. This one kind of hurts my heart, if I'm being honest. The love story between these two is just something everyone longs for. They were admired by humans and the gods, and yet they were still punished for it. What? Alcyone was the daughter of the god of wind and devoted wife to King Ceyx of Trachis. They were so in love with each other, they often playfully called each other Zeus and Hera. Despite many of the gods admiring them, and this was clearly an endearment, Zeus wasn't pleased. How dare they compare themselves to the gods? So he waited until Ceyx planned to visit the oracle, against his wife's wishes, who was concerned the wind he faced would be too harsh on the sea. Even her father had difficulty controlling it. But he did, and Zeus stirred a storm that sunk the ship. With his last breath, Ceyx prayed his body would be brought back to his wife. Hera took pity on the mournful widow and sent a messenger and the body back to her. After burying her husband, she flung herself into the sea to be reunited with him. The gods were horrified by Zeus's actions because they loved the two of them, so he tried to atone for his rash action by transforming them into kingfisher birds. Yeah, Zeus, turning them into birds, it really fixes everything, don't? You're fine. Number 2, Pan. What a weirdo! Pan is literally the weirdest horn dog god who ever graced the planet Earth. Firstly, the way this dude came to be makes no sense. There are many versions, but one of them involves Odysseus' lonely wife getting jiggy with 108 suitors. Pan, like, stamina, right? Pan had the hind legs and horn of a goat and was the god of shepherds, flocks, hunters, forests, pastoral music, and fertility, the last one being the most prominent. Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye would have been this guy's anthem. He pursued everything and everyone, nymphs being his favorite. They would be so desperate to get away from him they'd have to turn into trees, Mira, reeds. Echo was even killed by his minions when she denied him. He could also multiply himself, creating like a swarm of Pan. He's also the only god who ever died, but no one is quite sure how that happened, so again, another confusing thing about him. Number 1, last but not least, Thyestes and Atreus. This next one will have your brain scrambled by the end. Thyestes and Atreus were brothers constantly at odds. While their father, the king of Mycenae, was away at war, they seized the city and Atreus became king. He sacrificed a lamb with a golden fleece to seal the deal with Artemis and gave the fleece to his wife, who was fooling around with his brother Thyestes, and she gave the fleece to him. Thyestes made his brother swear that whoever had the fleece would be king, and thinking that his wife kept it safe, he agreed. Thyestes then showed the fleece. Atreus, pissed off, asked the gods for help. Hermes told him to tell Thyestes to promise that he would be made king again if the sun went backwards in the sky. Thyestes agreed, thinking it was impossible, so Zeus made it happen. Then Atreus fed Thyestes his own sons for dinner unknowingly and banished him as punishment. Then an oracle told Thyestes that in order to exact revenge, his own daughter had to have his son. So he made that happen in the grossest way possible. And then, it sounds like I'm talking about some dramatic housewife show. And then the son grew up, killed Atreus, and Thyestes became king. But wait, Atreus' sons, Agamemnon and Menelaus, came back, overthrew him, and Agamemnon finally became king, ending the whole cycle. We're good. Alright, I'm tired after that one. Number 10, Pandora's box. I don't understand. Why would you even have a box like this in the first place? According to Greek mythology, the beginning of the earth was free of pain and suffering. The land was perfect, exactly like Eden. Prometheus had created man by making them out of clay, and he will... Okay, well, we might get to that later in another list, but he did a whole bunch of good things for man, the gods got mad. Anyways, Hephaestus made the first woman, Pandora. They gave her beauty, cleverness, charm, and curiosity. Curiosity killed the cat. Her name translates to all gifted. But then Zeus was like, you know what would be a great gift? I'm gonna give this girl a box and tell her not to open it. That's like putting a B-Day present in a 4-year-old's lap and being like, ooh, enjoy the wrapping. No. Well, guess what happened? Because they gave her curiosity, it got the best of her and she released all the troubles into the world. Disease, violence, madness, greed, old age, death, plague, slow walkers, and people who eat really loud at the movies. Okay, the last thing to leave was hope, so at least that's a good thing. But you gotta wonder, who in the heck let Zeus be the leader of everything if he made a crap decision like that, with no foresight at all? Why put that stuff in a box? I don't know. Stop it. You're fine. Number 9. Echo and Narcissus. Look, there's nothing wrong with doing a fit check before you leave for work. Give yourself like a, ooh, damn, you know? Do that. Love yourself. But if you're stuck there for the whole day, there's a thing called being a narcissist, which is derived from a character in Greek mythology named Narcissus. The love story between Echo and Narcissus is a curious one, which makes very little sense. Echo was a beautiful nymph who was cursed by Hera when she tried to protect Zeus from getting caught because he was swing. She was now only allowed to say the last word anyone said, hence Echo. Echo was just one of many who pursued Narcissus, but her love was deep and true. One day, as she waited for him to say the last word, she finally went to him when he called her. Immediately, he spurned her off, saying like, no one's better than me, so get out of here, you nymph. You called her, dude. The goddess Nemesis wasn't pleased with his behavior, so she decided to punish him. Nemesis lured him to a steady pool of water where he spotted the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Himself, and he fell passionately in love. Stung by the pangs of unrequited love at last, Narcissus took his own life rather than live without being able to touch himself. Moving on. Number 8, King Midas. Whoever used the term Midas touch and thought it was a good thing needs to read the story again. The Midas touch is an allusion to King Midas, who thought having the power to turn everything into gold was gonna be a good thing, but he didn't specify, and there's always a catch. There's always a catch. After Midas welcomed with open arms Dionysus's merriest reveler, Dionysus said he would give him one wish. He wished to turn everything he touched into gold, because he needed money. He was delighted at first, turning twigs and plants to gold, but then when he got hungry, he found he couldn't eat or drink anything without it turning into gold. Panicking, his daughter ran towards him to comfort him. Out of instinct, he hugged her back because he was a hugger. She soon turned into gold. Dionysus heard his curses and prayers and told him he must wash himself in the river Patroclus. Now, whether everything turned back to normal is debatable. Some stories say they did, others didn't, so there is some confusion there, but either way, Midas learned to appreciate all the things around him as opposed to wanting more. Morals. Number 7, Daedalus and Icarus. We all wanted to jump off the roof when we were kids with wings made from paper to see if we could fly. I mean, why not? Massive metal planes are able to do it, why can't we? Literally, planes are insane. Side note, because science, that's why. But with stories like Daedalus and Icarus, a part of me still thinks it could work as long as you don't fly too close to the sun. Daedalus was a master inventor who designed the maze for King Minos' palace. He, along with his son, built it together, but the king tricked them and trapped them inside. Daedalus was said to have earned his skills from Athena herself, and soon he fashioned a pair of wings with wax and quills. Soon, father and son were able to flee, but Icarus ignored his father's warnings of flying too close to the sun, otherwise the wax on the wings would melt. Soon, this happened and Icarus crashed into the sea and died. It's a marvel that the wings worked in the first place, but it's even more of a miracle that they evaded the Minotaur, who was like, by the way, inside the maze that they built for it. Also, no one explained how they broke out of the maze in order to get into the air into the first place, so I'm not sure how all this worked. If my parents said I couldn't jump off the roof with fake paper wings, then it only makes sense that this would fail, I guess. Number 6, Apollo and Daphne. Ever had someone like not get the hint and continue to slide into your DMs? So in order to avoid them, you like have to turn into a tree so they leave you alone? Ha! Anyways, yeah, me too. It's a tough place to be, especially in the case of Apollo and Daphne. Apollo made the massive mistake of making fun of the god Eros, who, you know, the guy with the arrows that make people fall in love, Cupid. Well, in order to mess with him, he shot a golden arrow at Apollo, causing him to fall desperately in love with the nymph Daphne, and at the same time, Eros struck Daphne with a lead arrow, causing her to detest the god. Apollo pursued her with such fervor that Daphne eventually got exhausted running away from him, so she prayed to the river god Peneus to rid him from her. So she sacrificed her physical form and transformed into the laurel tree. Desperate measures, folks. Apollo was so distraught, he made her his sacred plant and always wore stems of the laurel tree on himself, which means he would have had to break them off the branches. Which, if you're thinking about that, did Daphne feel that as a tree, you know? Did he just keep causing her more and more pain? Ugh. Number 5, Chiron. I think the last video or the video before, I don't know, my brain is pretty scrambled, but I mentioned the story of how Ixion made love to a cloud and gave birth to half horse, half men people. Yeah, well, as confusing as that is, like, where did those genes come from? Chiron was an exception to the rule. He was the son of the bond between Titan Cronus and a nymph and became a kind of honorary god. Unlike his other horny relatives, Chiron was a trusted, artistic, and intelligent being. He was still part horse, but his front legs were still human. So I guess imagine a man wearing half of those like 2 men horse costumes. Yeah. He didn't play the field, really, but was married to a nymph named Charicolo and had 3 daughters and a son. He trained fantastic heroes such as Achilles, Jason, Perseus, Ajax, and Heracles or Hercules. But his most noble act was giving up his mortality in order to free Prometheus. As a reward for his sacrifice, he became a fantastic constellation in the sky. Number 4, Delphine. The most confusing thing about Delphine is actually what she was supposed to be. A python, a dragon, and some ancient accounts equate her with Echidna, the mother of all monsters, a half woman, half snake being. She has also been confused for a male serpent, but according to the earliest Homeric hymn, she was a girl dragon. Anyone get that reference? No? Okay, moving on. There are quite a few different accounts of the goddess, and descriptions of her aren't really consistent, but we do know that she was a dragon type thing born from Gaia, the Greek goddess of earth. Her name means womb, and only us ladies really understand why a womb would be depicted as a dragon. The time of the month, I know. Delphine was given the charge of guarding the Oracle of Delphi. For some reason, Apollo really wanted to control it, so Delphine and him went head to head on several occasions. He eventually slew her with his bow, allowing him to take control, so unfortunately that happened. But hey, he's a god. Number 3, Medusa. The origin of her story has a few versions, but no matter what way of getting there, she ends up as a gorgon. Her hair full of snakes and armed with a petrifying gaze, Medusa is one of the most prominent figures in Greek mythology. The story of Medusa has come under some confusion recently. Some say that the god of Poseidon took her without consent, violating her oath to Athena, and therefore the goddess punished her. Some say it was consensual, some say that she just insulted Athena somehow, but this is the most popular story. Medusa, as a mortal woman, was said to be the most beautiful woman in the world, but remained an enchanting and steadfast priestess for Athena. Though at first Athena was proud of her subject, she became irritated that the people were only at the temple to see her, because she was fire. Poseidon didn't like Athena because she won Athens, so he tried to seduce the young maiden to get her angry. She refused because she's awesome and ran to the temple and prayed to Athena for protection, which the goddess gave her none, so Poseidon took her anyways. Athena punished her, saying it was her fault, though like, obviously it wasn't. Where the heck were you, Athena? Bad move. You'd think Athena would be half decent in this situation, but guess not. So she turned her into this ferocious gorgon, and then on the way out of the temple she ran into her best friend and turned him into stone and a whole bunch of other people. It's a really sad story. She wasn't a monster. I don't think so anyways. Number 2, Pygmalion and Galatea. We talked about Narcissus, and this story is kind of in the same vein. Like, you know, you fall in love with your own work of art. The world is wide and strange, and people marrying cars and objects is actually far from myth. It's actually happened, but like why? How? No clue. Which brings us to the strange tale of Pygmalion and Galatea. Pygmalion was a sculptor and carved incredible lifelike ivory creations. His dedication to his craft left him no time for love, and even swore to a life without wedlock. But this longing one day manifested in a statue he carved of a woman of unparalleled beauty. He could not take his eyes off his creation and named her Galatea. He clothed her, decorated her, kissed her. The guy was obsessed. The festival of Aphrodite was approaching, and he prayed and prayed she would come to life so he could marry her. Aphrodite, upon seeing the sculptor, was awestruck by her beauty and agreed. As you can guess, though unlike most Greek love stories, they lived happily ever after, which is unfamiliar for the Greeks, honestly. So many tragic stories. Greek tragedy is a thing. Number 1, last but not least, Io and Zeus. Yet another reason to be wary of clouds. I honestly don't know how the gods made love via vapor, but some things we will just never know. Io was a follower of Hera, and Zeus, upon seeing her one day, fell hard in love, or in lust. Depends. She constantly avoided his lustful attempts until one day Zeus decided to take what he wanted by surrounding her as a cloud and making love to her without consent. Which is for some reason a word I can't say on YouTube, but you get the point. Hera figured that out, turned her into a white cow because she was mad, tied her to an olive tree, and had her guarded by a 100-eyed dog. Zeus then sent Hermes to get rid of him, which he did, but then Hera released the cow Io and plagued her with madness as she wandered around. While wandering, she met the poor titan Prometheus, who was cursed to have his liver torn out every day, and he comforted her by saying that she would one day return to her human form and bear a child by Zeus that would someday release him. Zeus caught up with her in Egypt, turned her back to human form, then her descendant, like 11 generations later, Hercules, released Prometheus from his chains. But wait, I thought that was Chiron. What? Number 10. Dionysus, man. Dionysus was like never a dull moment. He literally exploded into existence after his mother Semele burst into pieces when Zeus showed her his true form because he was tricked by Hera. As a whole thing. Then Zeus continued the gestation period by carrying him in his thigh. Ever since then, he took on the responsibility of being god of fertility, winemaking, and madness. So essentially the party god, the frat boy of Olympus. However, some say that Dionysus was a result of a union between Zeus and Persephone, which is like even more confusing, but hey. It's a myth, so let's go. But the most famous story about him revolves around the Bacchae and the story interpreted by Euripides. Pentheus, the king of Thebes, banished the worship of Dionysus and forbade the women of the kingdom from participating in the Bacchus. You can bet frat boy wasn't happy about this, he doesn't like being banned. He cast a spell of madness on all the women of the kingdom to attend the festival. So Pentheus caught him somehow and imprisoned him, but you can't chain a god. Dionysus decided on his revenge. He transformed into an irresistibly beautiful woman and lured Pentheus to spy on the Bacchic rituals. When the Maenads spotted him, they thought he was a wild dog. Peeping Tom, more like. So they tore him limb from limb. One of the attackers was his mother, Agave, who didn't know the animal was actually her son in the madness that she was wrapped up in. So yeah, there are plenty more stories regarding this rascal, but this will have to wait for part 3. Number 9, Lycurgus. We talked about Mira in part 1, you know, the woman who slept with her father and then turned into a tree from which she gave birth. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch part 1 right now. Yeah, weird times. Well, here is another plant story that's equally as confusing. I know branches can sometimes look like arms, but how do you confuse your son for one? Well, Dionysus has to be involved. Lycurgus attacked and injured the aforementioned party god, Dionysus, and needless to say, the gods were not happy about it. Dionysus was basically doing a pub crawl with wine in the mortal realm, and Lycurgus wasn't jazzed about it because he was a messy dude. As punishment, Dionysus descended upon him with madness. In this violent state, Lycurgus saw a pile of weeds that he just had to get out of his garden, so he took an axe and chopped them away. Little did he know that it was actually his very own son that he was chopping to pieces. He also took the life of the rest of his family, and he even took off his own legs in his madness. After he finally passed away, he was entombed in a rock as a sign of disrespect for offending the gods. So, moral of the story, don't whine about the man of the vine, who likes to party all the time. Don't do it. Number 8. Hera the Virgin. The most confusing thing in all of Greek mythology was Hera and Zeus' marriage. Sometimes you just gotta know when it's time to call it quits. Between them being siblings, Zeus cheating on her all the time, Hera killing people over jealousy and spite, things were just messy. But did you know that Hera actually grew back her virginity annually? Not at all possible to rebuild that in real life, but if you're a god, then anything is possible. Hera was the goddess of virginity and was worshipped as the goddess of matrimony, virginity, and marriage. Though she was married, albeit unhappily, she was revered as a virgin, which clearly she wasn't. So in order to maintain this, she renewed her virginity every year by bathing in the spring of Kottabos. The rites performed in order to do this were kept a secret and never spoken of, but she did it. This meant that people could still revere her for it, and she could pretend for a moment that Zeus and her never got jiggy with it, because obviously she'd want to forget that. After all, being a faithful wife to an unfaithful husband doesn't sound like a grand old time if you ask me. Number 7. Skyron. I don't know about you, but if someone washed my feet for me, the first thing I would do would say, thank you. Full stop. Like, that's it. The last thing I would do is blast them off a cliff with said clean toesies. Already there are a few things I never thought I would say to thousands of people, but what a great intro to the story of Skyron. Skyron was a bandit who was obsessed with killing people after and while they washed his feet. Everybody's got their thing, I guess. He would call travelers on the road to help him wash his feet, which a surprising amount of people agreed to do, right? Imagine someone asking you to do that today. You just hear a voice pleading from a dark alley to like, please wash my feet, wash my feet. I need someone to wash my feet. Would you go? Serious question. Anyways, when these extremely kind people would offer help, he would kick them in the face and push them over a cliff. Yeah. To add insult to injury, at the base of the cliff was a man-eating tortoise who would eat the remains of the either dead or still alive people. Talk about kicking a man while they're down. He got away with this too many times. Imagine the parents having to warn their kids not to wash random people's feet. Thankfully, Theseus, Poseidon's son, butted in and threw him off the very cliff he so enjoyed in his pastime. I like how the crime fits the punishment here, you know? It's satisfying. I like it. It's good storytelling. Number 6, Tereus, Procne, and Philomela. Okay, this one is probably the most messed up out of all the Greek tales, at least in my book. Trigger warnings galore here, folks. I'll try to be delicate. Tereus was the son of Ares and the king of Thrace. He married Procne, who was the eldest daughter of Pandion, the king of Athens. The two fell fast in love, but the Furies prepared their marriage bed and howled all night over their union. A very, very bad omen. Soon Procne longed for her little sister Philomela to join her, so Tereus went to fetch her from Athens. But as soon as he saw her, he was consumed by lust. Despite promising her father he'd protect her, he stole Philomela away and ravaged her. She promised she'd tell everyone what he did, so in order to stop that from happening, he cut out her tongue. He hid her away and told Procne that she'd been lost at sea and perished. For a year, Philomela snuck cloth from the maid that would care for her and wove a tapestry that told her story. The maid secretly brought the cloth to Procne and she immediately sought out her sister. Fueled by rage, she took her revenge. She stole the life of their own son, Itis, and fed him to Tereus for dinner. When he called for him, Procne revealed her sister and pointed to the stew that the king had finished. Tereus flew into a rage and gave chase, but the two women changed into birds to evade him. Birds. Okay. Procne turned into a swallow, Philomela a nightingale, and Tereus soon followed suit by the ravenous hoopoe bird. Would have thought it would be like a raven or like a hawk, but nope, he got the hoopoe bird. Okay. Number 5, Circe and the pigs. Circe wasn't so much considered as much a goddess, though she was one, more like a witch or an enchantress. She was the daughter of Helios, and depending on your sources, she was also the daughter of Hecate. This story is confusing because no one can really define whether she was the villain of the story or just like sad and lonely. The story goes as follows. The great hero Odysseus and his crew, after months at sea, happen upon her island. He sends his men ashore to investigate and find a cottage surrounded by magnificent yet docile beasts. Circe is heard singing, and when the men greet her, she invites them in for a hearty meal, and after months at sea, that's amazing. Unbeknownst to them though, the food is enchanted and the men all turn into pigs. Odysseus discovers this, and after Hermes places a protective charm on him, he confronts her. Her charms were powerless on him because of Hermes, so she invited him into bed instead. Yeah, sure, why not? This is also out of character for Odysseus because he was super in love with his wife back home, but I guess he couldn't say no because she was a goddess, and hey, sexy times. Circe realizes who he was, and having been foretold that Odysseus would be the only man to resist her, she lifted the curse on the men. She also made them hotter in the process, as a like, I'm really sorry. And then they all stayed for a year because I guess why not? They just stayed for a year. I don't know why. When they decided to finally leave, Circe ended up giving him a bunch of info to protect him, so I guess like she turned into a friend after all. And yeah, it's just weird. Why would you stay on an island that turned you into pigs? I don't know, do you? Number 4, Hercules holds a giant off the ground. The taller you stand, the farther you have to fall. A lesson the tall people of the world will understand. As a requirement for the 12 trials of Hercules, our great hero had to defeat a massive giant. This ginormous form was named Antaeus, an undefeatable immortal so long as his feet remained on the ground. His mother was Gaia, the goddess of the earth, so like all his powers came from her. Duh. Antaeus was a big fan of wrestling, he loved it, and Hercules was a big strong guy, so they went at it. But in order to defeat him, all Hercules had to do was lift him off the ground and wait until his power drained from him, and that was that. Because if he threw him on the ground, he would just like regenerate. So that sounds more like a prolonged piggyback than wrestling, but you know, whatever gets the job done. Good for you, buddy. And coming up to our top 3, we have number 3, Procrustes. Theseus dealt with a lot of interesting characters, and Procrustes was exactly how his name sounds. Crusty. If you ever find yourself wrapped up in a scheme designed to enforce uniformity by violent methods, then you may use the term Procrustean bed to adequately describe it. Procrustes was a serial taker of lives who had a very special bed. He would, like Skyron, soothe very weary travelers into a false sense of security by offering them a bed to stay for in the night. However, if you didn't fit on the bed, which no one did, he would either violently stretch you or trim you, to put it delicately, so that you would fit the bed. Obviously, all the travelers ended up dead. The notorious criminal lived between Athens and Ulysses, so coming across travelers was pretty easy. It was just a matter of time before Theseus would encounter him and set the record straight. Having heard of his crimes, Theseus decided to turn the tables and make Procrustes fit his own bed. So, what's even more confusing about this story is that Procrustes was the son of Poseidon, and so technically was Theseus' brother, so in a way, Theseus kinda committed fratricide, but Procrustes wasn't really behaving with godlike intentions, so I'm not sure where you can draw the line there. Number 2, Tantalus and Pelops. This one. Considering Tantalus was in such good rapport with the gods, I'm not sure why he did this. As we know, being on the gods' bad side even slightly leads to some pretty harsh punishment, so imagine really being on their bad side. Tantalus was the king of the land that is now Turkey today, and the gods thought he was just swell. So great, they'd even visit him from time to time for dinner. That sounds pretty good, man. Maybe they were awful dinner guests or something, but eventually Tantalus wanted to see how far he could push his luck. He devised a test that would determine whether the gods were all-knowing. He could have been like, how many fingers do I have behind my back? He could have been like, how many apples are in my dungeon? He could have done something random like that. But instead, he did the last thing you would think of. Tantalus killed his son Pelops, cooked him up, and served him for dinner. Of course, the gods were wise to it as soon as they sat down, and considering a father eating his children was a pretty sensitive topic, Kronos, they were not pleased. The only god who ate some of Pelops was Demeter, who was blinded by grief over the loss of her daughter Persephone because she was downstairs with Hades. Needless to say, they were pissed. Zeus threw Tantalus into the abyss of Tartarus to endure an eternity of torment. His punishment was to spend the rest of time waist deep in water with a fruit tree hanging above him. Each time he went to take a drink, the water receded, and every time he went to take a bite of the fruit, the wind would blow it off course. However, as soon as he stopped lunging for it, everything would return back to normal and tempt him even further. Happy ending for Pelops though, since Demeter ate part of him, they brought him back to life, and he was turned into ivory. Pretty good. Pretty good for him. Number 1, Endymion. This story isn't exactly linear, so it remains one of the most confusing tales because it was likely pieced together. The issue for historians is that no complete story exists of it today, but we know it's about the love between the goddess of the moon, Selene, and a human man. In some versions he was the son of Thelius, others say he was raised by him, but was actually the son of Zeus. Some say he was a shepherd, others a king, but either way, this guy spent a lot of time outside at night beneath the moon. Sometimes he would even stay up all night charting the path of the moon, ignoring the desire to sleep. Soon Selene fell deeply in love with Endymion, a strikingly handsome mortal man. Selene could no longer ignore her desire and decided to visit her love, abandoning the sky altogether. Softly, gently, she crept up upon him to avoid frightening him, but the two were swept away by the throes of love, but her adoration distracted her from her duties. In addition to that, Endymion was mortal, meaning their love would be short-lived in his mortal life. So Zeus, either for punishment or pity of Selene, put her lover into a deep, frozen sleep so that she may always see her love as a young man. But little more is known actually if that was punishment or pity. But hey, it's kind of beautiful.
Number 10, Dionysia. Okay, this one's pretty cool actually. The best way I could describe it is like it's a very old film festival, or how my friends and I treated the MCU movies. A bunch of my friends lived together and it was kind of like the House of Nerds. We were pretty cool, I swear. We all couldn't wait to get out and see the movies with who it seemed like every other person on Earth was also going to see the movies. The Avengers, they were pretty cool. That's what Dionysus in a nutshell is. Just less Captain America and no spandex. People would flock Athens to come watch plays in their huge amphitheaters. And oh, of course, just like all parties on this list here, there's gonna be lots of food and drink and wine. Can't have a showing without wine. Can't have that. Number 9. Kottabos. Well, in case you're wondering, yes, I have been to a few parties in my life. High school and college were times of great nights and even worse hangovers. Well, what can I say? I just enjoyed my time with friends and even strangers sometimes. And of course, I may or may not have had a few beer. That depends on if my mom's watching this video or not. I'm sorry, Mom. I also may have partaken in a few drinking games like Flip Cup, King's Cup, and my favorite, beer pong. You're looking at the basement champion there, folks, the number 1. You're looking at, I'm number 1, brother! Well, surprisingly enough, even in ancient times, the Greeks enjoyed drinking games. You wouldn't think. A game called Kottabos. The objective of the game was to swirl your cup around and throw it at targets. A lot of times inside the home. To me, it sounds like I'm going to need a towel for all that spilled liquid. I gotta clean up before Mom gets home or else I'll be in trouble. Number 8, frat parties. Okay, so given that they love to drink and party and as well as play games, it seems to make sense that the comparison of a modern day frat house is that of to the Greeks and the whole fraternity thing, that they're Greek names. What I'm getting at is sometimes the frat houses aren't the most well taken care of. You ever seen Animal House? Yeah, exactly, you know what I mean. Well, as it turns out, the ancient Greeks might have had some frat behavior themselves, besides the drinking games. And actually, besides wearing togas, I'm not sure if that was true or not. The Greeks would sometimes throw furniture around in their stupors. It's so strange, you just think of them being such educated wise men, not toga partying 70s animals, but here we are. Number 7, catch the cross. Here's a modern one for you that I think was pretty cool. Always learning here at Bumblebee. This is new for me. Catching the cross may sound like something you do at a wedding. Instead of a bouquet of flowers, you catch a little Jesus. There you over here. Oh, I want it. All jokes aside, this is one of the biggest celebrations of Orthodox Christians. Basically, it works like little weights your mom bought for the pool so you can practice diving. A priest throws a cross in a holy blessed body of water, and then young men from around all the village come and dive to retrieve it. Diving for weights was one of my favorite things to do as a kid. A cross? Sure, we'll go for it. We'll do it. Let's go. I'll dig up some Jesus. Let's go. Number 6, Ragutsaria. Halloween. North American children's favorite fall holiday. When I went to college, I made friends with a lot of international students, and for a lot of them, it was going to be their first Halloween that coming fall. It was a pretty cool experience to have their first with me. It was pretty cool. Who doesn't love Halloween? Personally, I prefer the costumes that were funny over scary, right? I've done so many funny things. Well, what if I told you that there's a similar holiday in Greece, just less Value Village costumes? In January, people in Castoria City wear scary masks and exorcise demons from the city. Who are you gonna call? Once all these spooky demons have been scared off, the masked people pass by where they sometimes receive coins for their ghost-busting services. That's kinda cool. You wear a mask, go scare someone, and then you get a coin. There's a coin for you. Have a coin. I'll take the drachma. Do they still use drachma? No, it's euros, right? Number 5, Virgin Mary snakes. Okay, this one is a little strange, especially if you've got an issue with snakes. I pride myself living in Canada because we have so many few species of venomous snakes. I believe it's 4 to be exact. That's good. 4 is a good number. That's not a shot at Australia. I love you guys, but you've got too many. On the island of Cephalonia, there's an event that happens every year that resembles our Groundhog Day. Except it's not freezing cold out and we're not waiting hours for a small town mayor to tell us if he saw a groundhog shadow or not and to vote for him in the next election. On the 15th of August is the celebration of the Dormition of Virgin Mary. During the service in the Church of the Virgin Mary and Marco Polo, harmless little snakes appear inside around this church, and at the end of the day, they disappear. As legend tells it, it's because pirates showed up to the island, and thanks to prayer, some snakes showed up as well to chase off said pirates. Kind of a weird story. It's kind of like Groundhog Day, sort of, kind of, right? There's a connection there, sure. Number 4, Christmas boat. Christmas boat, oh Christmas boat, I'm full of turkey, I hope you float. Isn't that cute? That was cute. That was good. I don't know about you guys, but if you've been watching here for a while, you know that I love Christmas. It's my favorite holiday. I love the music, I love the joy in the air, I love spending it with the whole family, grandma and grandpa, the snow, I love it all. And especially the movies. I love Christmas movies. Christmas Vacation is my favorite. Least favorite, Polar Express. It's not as good as people think. I don't know why people keep telling me that. It's not that good. It's not Tom Hanks' best work. Well, what's always good is decorating the Christmas tree. Well, as it turns out, some places in Greece, they decorate the kavarki, which is actually a boat with Christmas decorations instead of a tree. I can go either way, but with the boat, there's less pine needles to clean up and less for the family pet to eat and eventually vomit on the Christmas tree. That happens every year. I swear I got a cat and it just does a little hairball on the little thing around the Christmas tree. The skirt, that's what it's called, the skirt. Anyway, number 3. Apocryphes. This is the big one, baby. It's the one all Greeks wait for, or at least so I'm told. She starts off with a big fat church meeting and then no eating meat. No, don't. The whole thing lasts weeks with a surplus of dairy, cheese, and wine consumption, which is just fine by me. Then the masks get busted out, kind of similar to Mardi Gras and other Western Christian celebrations of the sort. Hey, if there's ever some lovely Greek fans out there, Taylor, Adam, and I could go for some delicious Greek cooking. We're all hungry boys, just saying. There's also an assortment of parades that look pretty fun too, the biggest one being in Patra. So in a nutshell, it's Greek Mardi Gras, just less sin. Number 2, Clean Monday. This is where we clean ourselves up. It's the Monday that ends the festivities. Some of you may know it as Lent, but this is huge in Greece. This is where we give up all of our meat eating and we eat seafood. Because, you know, fish, that's not meat for some reason. Right? It's weird. But it's 40 days of repenting, letting go of your sin, and all the mischief of the festival that you may or may not have partaken in. No need to bring up how much wine I drank. But I guess every party has to come to an end, right? And coming into the number 1 spot today, we have plate smashing. Oppa! Now how could I mention any Greek party or celebration without a plate breaking? It's been around for a long time, and how can you make this list without talking about plate smashing and Greek weddings? Any regular Greek wedding beats any of these holidays any day of the week. Enough food to feed an army, literally, music, dancing, and enough wine to sink a ship. All of this as soon as the bride and groom break the plate. It's beautiful. I love it. Number 10. The classic. Alexander the Great is probably the most infamous person on this list. Shout out again to my late 90s PC gamers, but because of Age of Empires and Civilization games, you are probably familiar with Alexander, one of the great conquerors of ancient times. So what does that mean exactly? Well, the man wasn't asking for land with please and thank you. He was asking with a spear and a shield, sort of style. And by asking, I mean just taking. However, for the brutal, handsome young king of many lands, his time to bask in his empire was short-lived, as he died soon after Persia was conquered. His achievements cannot be understated, however. Conquering so much at such a young age was very impressive, comparative to the mythological Achilles in grandeur. Number 9. A man in his barrel. This is going to be very difficult to talk about, simply because I find the premise of this to be comedy gold. Okay, close your eyes. Imagine ancient Greece. A city like Athens is populated with the wealthy in gowns and robes, and maybe even a stereotypical toga. Buildings of white stone and marble. A market bustling with people haggling for fresh produce and cloth. Perhaps even a fountain with some flowers. Beautiful, isn't it? However, just around the corner, not too far from the town square, there's a barrel. A barrel that's shaking vigorously. And what is causing this barrel to shake? Well, that would be the man who lives in it, Diogenes. Yes, a philosopher who was self-gratifying himself in a barrel in public. Diogenes defended his behavior by saying how he wished it was as easy to relieve hunger by rubbing an empty stomach. Yeah, I was sitting in my study earlier when a courier handed me a letter. I opened the letter in a warm candlelight glow. It was from the chief. And he said that's not it. Number 8, trendsetter. As if doing what Diogenes did in public wasn't bad enough, and I mean, come on, that's pretty scandalous. He also would commonly defecate in public theaters and urinate on those he found annoying. Sure, maybe major cities need people like this. I mean, come on, would New York City really be New York City if crazy people don't yell at you on the streets all the time? Huh? Diogenes just may have been the first to do such crazy things. Also, I'd like to argue his philosophy. If you just give me a moment, if he pees on people who are annoying him, could the people that are being peed on not deem that annoying and then do the same in return? I'm not a smart guy like the Greek leaders, but at least I know how to use a washroom. Just saying. Number 7, high fashion. I say if you got it, flaunt it. Humbly, of course. Maybe a nice pair of shoes, your favorite pants, or for me, a brand new suit that makes me feel gorgeous, baby, yeah. But for the most part, I shop at Walmart. Let's be honest, I don't have that kind of money for the Gucci flip-flops down to the socks. However, for the great Greek philosophers like Socrates, they were wealthy enough to enjoy a literal finer cut of cloth. Yes, they could, but Socrates said no. I want the peasant look, please. Apparently, the wise Greek man often didn't wear shoes and always wore the same ratty coat. It's also said that Socrates wasn't exactly a good looker. Put on some shoes though, that'd be rough. You're walking around all day with no shoes on? Oh, those would be rough looking feet, buddy. Number 6, smart streaker. Anyone that's ever spent time with a physics professor has probably heard the story 100 times, and that professor probably genuinely thinks this is a funny story. Archimedes, the famed Greek philosopher, made a strange discovery. Strangely, one night after a long day of hard thinking, he went to take a bath. Pondering the questions of life, he noticed something was happening in the tub. No, not his rubber ducky going missing, but rather a simple yet interesting concept of displacement. When he was submerged in the water rose. He deducted that if he measures the difference, that would equal his weight of volume. And if it works with an old man, then it would work with other things as well. He was so excited by this that he shot up and ran outside screaming, "Eureka! Eureka!" Well, that part may not have happened, but if it did, I'd hate to be his neighbor. No one wants to see that, man. Number 5. I had the high ground, Anakin. According to a disputable legend, however, given my semi-okay Palpatine impression, I had to include this on the list. Basically, Amdocles was a smart dude and had just earned himself a decent track record. He helped save people. Dude was credible. He gained somewhat of a following afterwards, almost to the point of worship. This may have gone to his head as he started to believe his own divineness and jumped into an active volcano, where strangely enough, he does not come out of it. Now I wonder what would have caused that to happen. Perhaps maybe he didn't have a certain galactic friend who was the Senate, the whole Senate and nothing but the Senate, and could shoot lightning out of his fingertips and help out of someone of the burning lava, yes. Number 4, manure burial. Heraclitus had edema, which is basically some bloating in the hands and feet due to excess water and fluids in the body. Not a big deal. Although, sometimes in ancient times, all diseases were serious because, well, in ancient times, frankly, a papyrus cut could be the difference between you attending the next celebration of town or taking a cruise down the river Styx. Heraclitus had a solution for this. As a learned man, he was never wrong. So what was his scientific medical solution to his ailment that might have gone away on its own? Well, he basically buried himself in manure so it would get rid of the excess water in his body. Yeah, I don't know how that works either. Unfortunately, he was attacked and eaten by wild dogs in his mud bath. He did not make it out. Number 3, Boys Club. Hypatia was a female philosopher at the Library of Alexandria, something that any archaeologist or historian would give their right kidney to witness in its glory. What's so scandalous about her, besides being a woman with knowledge that would scare a lot of men at the time? Things were alright until a Christian mob discovered she was a pagan. Well, this certainly could not stand, and in probably the weirdest assassination attempt ever, she was unalived by being sliced with clamshells. Or roof tiles. The translation gets a little lost. Regardless, we're not playing Clue here, so it doesn't matter if the Christian mob uses the shells in the library or not. The fact is, an intelligent woman who taught others was removed for no good reason. Number 2, countrymen, lend me your ears. Zeno of Elea was a learned man, and in a rebellion against his leader Nearchus, he was captured and received the beating only a stepson would know. However, in Zenos' final act of defense, he asked Nearchus to come close so that he could whisper in his ear. And channeling his inner Mike Tyson, reeled back his head and came in to take a bite out of his ear like Scruff McGruff the dog takes a bite out of crime. Sure, he was victorious, but history tends to remember things like that. You got a page in a textbook somewhere, Zeno. Number 1, Zeus. Does this man deserve an introduction? Here's another topic that could honestly be its own video. Zeus, the god of gods, the man with all the power and the affinity for tossing lightning bolts the same way Gordon Ramsay tosses salads. But I'll just write them off for you. Turned his first wife into a fly and ate her. Constantly unfaithful to his other wives. tied Prometheus to a rock and had his liver eaten by a bird, wiped out humanity, cursed a man to push a boulder up a steep hill for eternity, and made Atlas put the world on his shoulders. Shout out to my people in the audience who get anxiety trying to order a pizza over the phone. Now imagine you have to literally hold the whole world on your shoulders. Oh, too much pressure. Yes, I know Zeus is mythological, but a lot of others on this could be as well. This was a long time ago. Some documents just didn't live that long. Number 10, Clash of the Titans. An Avengers level threat, baby. The Titans were the big bad giants who ruled over the earth and the gods. Naturally, they all got along and there were never any problems, ever. Yeah, right. They fought like cats and dogs, though I never understood that because all the dogs and cats I know always got along great. But the Titans fought, and they fought some more, until your favorite boy Zeus had enough and kind of took control over everything. It's Zeus, it's what he does. It's too bad Aaron Yeager wasn't there to help out. Number 9, Prometheus. Poor Prometheus. This is my favorite tale from Greek mythology. I think it's rather sad for Prometheus. All he wanted to do was give us the knowledge of fire, and look at all the things that we did with it. Forged iron and steel, heated our homes, so no one would ever go cold again. And we cooked, which gave Gordon Ramsay 23 hit shows and a reason to curse when asking for the lamb sauce. Where's the lamb sauce? Prometheus went directly against Zeus's orders, and if you didn't know, that's kind of a bad thing. It can wind you up in a rather unfortunate position. A position like being chained up and having a large bird come feast on your intestines. Like I eat mom's spaghetti. She makes a good spaghetti. Thanks, Mom. You make a good spaghetti. Number 8, Icarus. I think we can all relate to this one, or at least have been told a version of this when we were flush. Things were going good for us. In a nutshell, Icarus got some wax wings and gained the ability to flight. Mind you, that was probably the dream of many ancient peoples. After Icarus got his wings, he got a little arrogant. He wanted to push his wings to the limit. Kind of like Iron Man in the first Iron Man movie. But instead of falling in a multi-million-dollar supersuit and looking handsome while doing it, Icarus sniffed one too many of his own farts and flew too close to the sun, where he burned up in it. So what's the lesson learned here, folks? Keep yourself grounded and don't sniff your own farts. Number 7, Jason and the Argonauts. Avenger level threat acquired. For some reason in our lives, you find stories of our favorite heroes forming almighty and powerful groups. The Avengers, the Justice League, BTS. That one might have too much power. But yes, Jason and the Argonauts were a band of heroes on adventures, slaying beasts, taking names, and Greekifying the area. Sadly, for Jason and the Argonauts, every time they try and make a movie about it, it just never works for them. I don't know. They had a visually impressive one in the 60s, and everything after that has just been a complete misfire. Hollywood, if your casting calls come my way, just know I make a great Jason. Look at me. I could be Jason. A sword, a shield, and there we go. That's it. Number 6, Hercules. Hercules, the strong one, or the one where Danny DeVito coaches him through the process of being a Greek legend. If Danny DeVito is coaching you through anything, that probably means you're gonna come out on top. And yes, before you start typing in the comment section, technically speaking, Hercules is the Roman copy of Heracles. I know. However, it's kind of one of those things that everyone just knows the one, so anytime a Greek dude shows up with muscles, you blush and you think of Hercules. As far as Greek mythology goes, it doesn't get any more classic than a super strong guy with abs and biceps, and maybe a little bit of olive oil on him, I don't know. Number 5, Sisyphus. Oh baby, do I feel this one. Story of my life, honestly, day late and a dollar short. Some of you folks at home may also share the same fate as me and this chiseled Greek man doomed for eternity. This one is also one of my favorites. Basically, Sisyphus was cheating the devil. Cheating death itself, actually. After sliming his way out of the underworld one too many times, Big Daddy Zeus had to intervene. Also, when I say I relate to him, it's not because I'm a trickster who cheats my demise or cheats the devil or Hades. I'll explain. So, after Sisyphus had done what he'd done, Zeus sentenced him to roll a giant boulder up a hill for eternity. When he gets to the top, she rolls back down to the bottom and he has to start all over again every day for the rest of time. Not just life, for time. Sometimes in life it feels like you're on a grind and you work and work and work, and sometimes you go right back to square one no matter how hard you work. That sucks and that can be exhausting, but never give up because Chetty ain't and neither should you. Number 4, King Midas. The lesson in this one, folks, is to be careful what you wish for. King Midas was being granted a wish. He wished for anything I touch be turned to gold. Now, I'm not an economist because I already have too many jobs on the internet, but you can imagine how at today's rate of gold, how wealthy you would be. Sheesh! Yeah, gold was valuable back then, but now, wowie. So his wish was granted, and everything he touched turned to gold, which, for a good couple hours, must have been the most fun anyone has ever had, ever. Dude was seeing drachma signs. However, this wealthy gift he had been given quickly turned into a curse, or a burden. Everything he touched turned to gold. That included his food. Because of this, he starved. To fix this burden, he bathed in a river, and it's said that's why gold can be found in that river. I wouldn't mind having that power myself, but if I made food gold, or even worse, what if I made my beer gold? Number 3, Narcissus. This one's in the name. Basically, there was a guy named Narcissus, and he was gorgeous. Like George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Ryan Reynolds gorgeous, all put together. Oh. And he knew it, and he loved his image. Now, as a guy who goes on camera every day, naturally, you hate yourself. You hate your self-image. That's how it goes. Ask anyone here, they would tell you the same thing. But also, as someone who's on camera every day and funny from time to time, you kind of like yourself on camera, and you kind of like your self-image. It's a very strange relationship we have. However, no one is as bad as it comes to as Narcissus. One day in the forest, he came across a body of water where he saw his reflection cast, and it was so handsome, so gorgeous, that he couldn't look away. Ever. Hence the name Narcissist, or Narcissist. Or what most girls in high school find out what their boyfriends have. Narcissism. Ladies, let me know. Have you ever dated someone who has narcissism or looked in the mirror too long? Let me know, I'm curious. Number 2, Medusa. I feel like a lot of people know this one. Medusa, the half beautiful lady, half head of snakes in her head, and half monster thing with powers. Yes, I realize that was 3 halves and that doesn't add up, but you're talking to a guy who was voted class clown in the high school yearbook and not voted most likely to succeed in math. Because I just wouldn't. But she was the Gorgon monster who would turn men into stone. I do know that. If they looked into her eyes. That wasn't until your boy Perseus showed up like Link with the mirror shield and gave her a taste of her own medicine. What's the lesson on this one? I'm not sure. Maybe it's don't be so sure of your abilities. Maybe it's seeing things through. Or maybe it's having an extensive knowledge of tactics from a late 90s Nintendo character. That you never know when you're going to need that. You never know. I know that stuff. That can come in handy. Number 1, Pandora's box. I know you guys know this one, but this one is so simple. At first glance, it's not about turning things into gold or weird snakehead ladies or giants rising from beneath the earth to fight each other. It's a box. Something ain't good in that box, but it's just a box. So don't open it. I'm gonna say it again because there's gonna be people in the comment section that are gonna say, but Chetty, because you said don't open it, that means I really wanna open it. Imagine I'm Robert De Niro telling you not to open it. Nope, no way. Nope, not gonna happen. Nope, null and void. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's how you know I'm serious, because I did a bad impression. Oh great, somebody opened it. Yes, that's right, Pandora's box was opened and it said that all the evils of the world were released from the box. Good tale, good moral, but who the heck thought putting all those evil things in the world in the box was a great idea? Whatever happened to just having memento boxes? You know, you open up a thing, like this is the time I farted on camera, this is the time I went to the cottage, you know what I mean? Whatever happened to that? Number 10, hotel speed. Okay, picture this. You're young and in a hotel with your parents. Maybe it's a vacation, maybe it's a trip, or maybe it's a hockey game. Nice. Nonetheless, you find yourself in a long hallway with a strange looking carpet. Hotel hallways always have weird carpets, I don't know. Maybe it's the giant hamburger and milkshake you just ate. Maybe it's the hotel TV, or the excitement of just not being at home. But something has changed. You're different. Your powers have been amplified. For this corridor will be your personal racetrack. A shame Guinness World Records isn't here to clock you in at max speed, because for some reason if you fly down that hallway any faster, the rug would catch fire. Yes, the joys of running down a hotel hallway. This is probably how the first Olympians felt at the first Olympic Games. I'm comparing it to that for some reason, sure we'll go with it. Where the only event at these Olympic Games was running. Like many of the other events that would later come later on, this was done without clothing, which is fine. As long as you're, not doing that in the hotel hallway. Keep clothes on. Number 9, WWE, brother. Only if you could have seen the look on my face when I discovered that wrestling in the WWE isn't as real as I thought it was. The shock, the confusion, and the loud ringing in my ear. It was pretty serious for me. I got really into it as a kid. Gave me some Vietnam flashbacks, seriously. You mean to tell me that there was an intricate planning into every hidden fall, every entrance, and every time we heard the sound of a steel chair connecting with someone's forehead? Oh man. As a kid, I never would have guessed that, but when the Undertaker walks in a room, you take notice. Those thoughts just go away. Sadly, the ancient Greeks did not have cage matches, turnbuckles, or personas based on hyper male confidence. What they did have, however, was some real wrestling, some bare knuckle, no clothes, oiled up kind of wrestling. Nice. Instead of a one leg up pin, a scoring system was used for when the opponent's body was on the ground. And I'm sure lots of people got injured in the process. No thanks. I'll stick to the cage matches. Number 8. Pancration. Here's another story for you. It might seem kind of silly, but growing up, I got to witness the birth of a mainstream sport. The UFC got its start in the early 90s, but blew up in the mid 2000s. Now, I'm not much of a sports guy. Besides major championship matches or games, I don't really watch any sports. I'm more of a film and video game guy, if you couldn't tell. However, my first interaction with the UFC was seeing an octagon-shaped ring, and my grade 2 geometry immediately kicked in and said, That's an octagon. Wow, okay, that's different. However, the second thing that I noticed is that this was not wrestling, and this wasn't boxing. It was kind of a mixture of both. Sort of a mixed martial art, if you will. Well, that's kind of what pancration was. There was no indirect punching or kicking, but pretty much anything else goes. To me, this sounds like a good way to get injured. Kind of like wrestling before, now it's just even worse. And as I'm sure you all know, paper cuts can be lethal back then, so maybe not such a good idea. Did I mention this is done without clothes too? Everyone's naked. Number 7, the road trip. This isn't an Olympic event, but honestly, it should have been. Think about it for a minute. I want you guys to look out the nearest window right now. Get up, go ahead, look out the nearest window. Tell me what you see. You probably see a road with cars. When you need a fast food fix, it's as simple as getting in a car and driving on the road to your destination. Or getting it delivered with your favorite food delivery app. It's 2022, we can do a lot of crazy stuff now. What I'm getting at is that people from all over the Greek city-states came to Olympia to witness the first Olympics. Except, it would have been a triathlon just to get there. Frankly, my biggest fear, walking. That was the main mode of transportation, which after a while in those sandals was probably hell. Imagine trekking many, many miles by land and sea to only be exhausted to watch athletes become exhausted. Oh, I need some water just thinking about it. Woo. Number 6, peace. Peace. What's better than a good war? A better armistice, or at least I'd like to hope so. During these first Olympic Games, which on a side note, if I had a time machine and a scooter, I'd love to see firsthand. There was people and athletes coming from all corners of Hellenistic civilization, all Greek states and colonies. Well, sometimes these Greek states got caught up in these little things called wars. Who knew, right? But when the Olympics were on, a truce was called. Messengers were dispatched to announce the truce, which gave all the people traveling on their long treks safe passage. I also find it somewhat amusing that they did this all for one day. That's right, the events only lasted one day. Some folks did days of traveling only to have it all be over in 24 hours. The opening ceremony couldn't have taken that long either, so I feel like it's kind of a waste of time. Only if we got some of that peace right now. Russia is looking at Ukraine a certain kind of way, just waiting to act up. Bad Russia, stay in your corner. Number 5, tanks. Okay, so after a few Olympics, people got tired of walking those many, many miles just to see some dudes run a mile. We need more events, said the Olympic organizers, but what? We have athletes running, what else is there? Okay, I hear you. What if we get athletes to run, but with full military armor and gear on? Yeah, that's right. There was another race where athletes would wield the armor of the Greek soldiers and race. I can imagine that there was a clunking noise, or at least a lot of it, and also how difficult it must be to run in bronze armor. I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. Come a little closer. A little closer. A little closer. Whoa, too close. Bronze armor isn't good for chafing. Because let me tell you something, hot Mediterranean sun, not a lot of water, and running in hot metal attire? Someone's gonna have to come over and put baby powder on my bum bum. Number 4, the classic. I don't know why, but when I think of ancient Greeks, I think of grapes on the vine, marble, chariots, and the movie 300. It's kind of hard to forget those spray-on abs. Although someone could put them on me, kind of nice. Equestrian events were another event of the ancient Greek Olympics, and I have something nice to say about something for once. While every other event was dominated by males because, well, only males were allowed to compete of course, the equestrian events allowed women. Nice! And naturally, ladies, when someone points the spotlight on you, you shine. A notable winner of the event was Ctesica, a Spartan princess and athlete who was an excellent horse breeder. I guess that's a nice thing to be remembered by. According to some records, 2 monuments were built in honor of her victory. I rode a horse once. I can firmly say that I prefer the automobile. Just saying. You walk around like that, that's why all the cowboys walk like this. You just do that all that. Number 3, the long jump. After running in armor, it was discovered that jumping makes for a great Olympic event. How high? How far? It's simple, really. It should come as no surprise that I did not perform well in that section of track and field day at school. To my disadvantage, there was no strength-based events because it was considered unhealthy for us because we were so young. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. My counter to that argument would be, why are you making tubby kids run the 1500 meter? That's liable to have the kid with asthma writing his math test in the hospital bed later. I'd probably be joining him. However, I am a supporter of the ancient Greek jumping event. Basically, athletes gotta jump as far as they can whilst holding 2 large rocks. Now, if we did that today, people would know what it's like to do a long jump when grandma feeds you too much. Yeah, it's not easy. Number 2, the discus, the javelin, and the hammer. Sounds like a good band. Hey, these are all events that we still compete in today. That's awesome, but doesn't it make you nervous when the athletes are throwing those bad boys around? Especially the hammer throw. God, it just makes me so nervous. While I couldn't find an exact example of an accident happening, I doubt the ancient Greeks had safety in mind for spectators. The discus was made from stone or bronze, and they were tossing those suckers the same way Guy Fieri tosses Caesar salad. Which is a lot because he's kind of a big guy too. However, for me, it's the javelin that's most terrifying, as that was an appropriate weapon of war for the time, and athletes are just throwing them around like it's nothing. You're telling me the crowd was a safe distance away from the splash zone? Yeah, just keep your eye in the sky to be safe, folks. I don't know about that. Number 1, rap battle. Honestly, this is something we should bring back to the Olympics. While I was complaining about not being able to compete in strength-based events earlier, I, as a theater kid, would have much preferred some of the other less intensive events the ancient Greeks had up to offer. The ancient Greeks were not just chucking stones and chafing in bronze armor. There was also a competition with the arts. Poetry, song, and singing. Imagine if America entered Eminem into a rap battle contest. There would be no contest. Imagine if Canada entered one for musicians. K.D. Lang, Celine Dion, and Anne Murray, just singing angels. Number 10, Greek pyramid. Okay, so ancient Greeks. You got your beautiful women, olive oil, olives, togas, beautiful white buildings. I mean, come on, what am I missing here? Shout out to the Greek community, by the way. Chetty loves you, especially the Danforth. It's a Toronto thing. Well, what if I told you ancient Greeks built a pyramid? 2 to be exact. What? I know, right? They are nothing close to the size or the ones that are in Egypt, but that's okay. Nothing's gonna be like those because those ones are the best. More interesting than that is that we don't really know that much about them. They are notably in poor condition, and scientists are still speculating on who, what, when, why, and how. All we know is the where. It's in Greece. That's all we got so far. Kind of interesting though. You think pyramids are Egyptian, but no, they're in Greece too. I guess they're everywhere. Who knows? Anyway, number 9, Greek computer. The Antikythera mechanism. Ooh, I said that right, I hope. This sounds like something straight out of Call of Duty Zombies, but alright, I'll bite, I said to myself when looking at this strange contraption. In a nutshell, it's described as the oldest example of an analog computer, which is a fancy way of saying a basic or manual powered computer that calculates simple solutions and or outcomes. It might not sound like much, but to me it's pretty cool. I was born in a unique time. I saw home computers become mainstays in everyone's home, and then in the late 2000s become not even a second thought in everyone's home. By then everyone just had a computer. It's kind of crazy how far we've come. Sure, this machine was simple, but it makes us wonder what else may have been lost to time, and it's speculated that it was used for calculating constellations, dates, and stuff like that. Simple but very complicated. I know I can never build one. Pretty cool. Number 8, Greek cult, also known as the Eleusinian Mysteries. Super secret cult meeting with weird rules. Every generation has this. The Greeks had this, the founding fathers had the Freemasons, and we have anime. Anime North, right? No, I'm just kidding. I love you guys. I'm just joking around. Trust me, there's some crazy clubs out there, man. This cult was so mysterious that, well, the word mysterious kind of comes from that. It was all about Demeter and her daughter Persephone, and to join, you can't have unalive anybody. That was like the main rule. You can't have a rap sheet, bro. No rap sheet. Which, to be fair, is a good prerequisite. I wouldn't want anyone in my club to have that either. That's about where the info well dries up. We don't know that much about them. Kind of reminds me of the Assassin's Creed Templar stuff, though. Just saying, it's kind of weird, kind of similar. Number 7, the first actor. Lights, camera, action. Marlon Brando, Robert De Niro, Leo DiCaprio, some of the best actors of our time. Marlon Brando would probably say he's the worst in some sort of weird humble brag, but that's just the guy he was. However, who was the first? Thespius, who jumped on the back of a wooden cart and began reciting poetry as if he was the character. Art. Today that would probably get you locked up in a rubber room, but back then it was art, thus inventing thespian theater. You gotta appreciate waking up one morning and just inventing a new art medium. Yes, I love to be in the back of carts. Number 6, the Colossus of Rhodes. Another one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world is the Colossus of Rhodes, erected by Charles of Lindos in 280 BC. It was constructed to celebrate the successful defense of Rhodes City against an attack by Demetrius Poliorcetes. That's the best you're gonna get, folks. Who had besieged it for a year with a large army and navy. According to modern descriptions, it was 33 meters high or 108 feet in American. During an Arab conquest in 653, she was completely destroyed and all her scraps were melted down or sold. Since 2008, there has been talk of rebuilding this beauty, and hell, I say why not? It would give me another reason to travel to Greece. I want to do traveling, baby. I want to get on my airplane for the first time. You know, get on there. Maybe make a vlog of it. That'd be kind of cool, right? Number 5, statue of Zeus. Another one of the ancient wonders of the world. The statue of Zeus was a giant seated figure depicting the almighty Greek boy at 41 feet tall. Made by the Greek sculptor Phidias around 435 BC, built inside the temple of Zeus. The statue was made of gold and ivory, totally non-opulent resources, ornamented with ebony, ivory, and more gold. Can never have enough. However, it was lost during the 5th century, and really the only details we know about it are from the ancient Greek descriptions and representations on coins. When I pass, hopefully I'll have left enough comedy for the world to enjoy. Maybe I'll get an opulent statue too. Just no ivory though, that's cruel. So maybe we'll go for like an all maple wood statue or something since I'm Canadian. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Maybe like nickel for Sudbury or something, I don't know, something like that. Number 4, Constitution of Athens. The Declaration of Independence. Can you get a more important artifact from the past that shows how things worked? The playbook on democracy and freedom. God bless America. That bad boy is locked up tight. It's important. Just make sure Nicolas Cage isn't anywhere near it. Well, the Constitution of Athens was equally as important, but well, it wasn't Nicolas Cage, but we did lose it. Parts of it were recovered from a papyrus in the late 1800s, but more confusing than that is there seems to be 2 of them. For some reason. It doesn't seem to be a copy either. One possibly a student of Socrates or perhaps one of Zenos. Truth is, we're not sure, and that's why it's on this list. At least we know John Hancock signed the Declaration of Independence. Put a big old signature right there. And now we know, and it's locked up. Nicolas Cage can't get it. Number 3, Pythagoras. A squared plus B squared equals C or something like that. Or as Google calls it, the square of the longest side of a right triangle is equal to the sum of the squares of the remaining 2 shorter sides. Pretty sure I heard my math teacher talk about that once, but it's not that important, right? I'm not doing much math and my high school math teachers. I digress. I shouldn't be mean because she was actually one of the best teachers I ever had. The subject sucked, but she was great. Shout out to Miss Savage, you're the best. It seems the life and work of Pythagoras are somewhat of a mystery, to the point where, well, it's like third-hand information, and that's never good. A lot of him is told through that of Romans, which is then told through Germanic tales of him, so really, we're just not 100% sure. But his math survived, so maybe there is some truth to it. Who knows? He made it to my math class, so. Number 2, Homer. Known as an overweight American family dad who resides in an unknown state at 742 Evergreen Terrace. Just kidding, we're talking about the smart Homer, who arguably wrote two of the best literatures ever, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Some historians believe that Homer may not have actually existed though, and just like his yellow counterpart. There are some that think perhaps Homer was just a writer's name and it was actually a teamwork of actual writers who composed the work. It doesn't change the work, but well, we'll probably just never know. Number 1. Lost Island. Greeks seem to have a knack for losing islands in the ocean. Atlantis and now this. Today, in what is just off the coast of the Dilkali Peninsula was the island of Argonusa and the city of Cain. Philosopher Xenophon talks of the city and its battles. However, if you look there now, you would not find very much, as the island has sunk and the city is gone. It's kind of hard to live underwater, we're not fish. Now in its place is the peninsula. A team of archaeologists in 2015 declared this was the site of Cain after discovering evidence of an ancient harbor. Ottoman maps depict the island being sunk as early as the 1600s. Look at that, you learn something every day here. Look at that.